Hi everyone, here it's Milena from Curly-n-Yarny. Before going into today's project, I would like to welcome all of my subscribers. So welcome back all of you, and if you are new to my channel, I hope you will like this video. If you do, make sure to subscribe. So let's get to it. So for today's project, I will be weaving a blanket. So I will make two panels that I will sew together afterwards, and the pattern used for the blanket will be Clasped Weft. So let's get weaving. So here's the project on the loom. So for today's video, I will have three parts. So the first part, I will talk about all the specifics of the project. So what yarn that I use, what heddle size that I use, and all of those kind of things. Then I will talk more about the pattern that I did, so the Clasped Weft pattern, so how to weave Clasped Weft, but also what was my inspiration about the colors for this project. And finally, I will get more in deep into the weaving of the blanket, so how to weave the two panels on the loom at the same time with the same warp, and also how to sew the two panels at the end together. Let's talk about the yarn that I use for the project. So for the warp, I use some acrylic yarn. It's 4 threads of 24-2 size yarn twisted together to make one thicker thread of yarn. So I use the golden yellow color and also the white color. And I warped it in my 7.5 Heddle. For the weft, I've used those very, can I say bulky? Well, this acrylic yarn that is you can buy at the store for, like, they come in very big size, very it's a value yarn, so you get a lot of yarn for your buck. So I had the gray and the golden yellow, and this is actually yarn that I've had lying around for a while, and I decided that I had to try to reduce my stash. So I said I really need to start weaving with this yarn. So today was a project for that. So I don't even have the label anymore of those yarns, so I'm not sure exactly what brand they were, but I know that they were both 100% acrylic. So this is it for the yarn. Also, I decided to have the weft yarn much thicker than the warp yarn because I'm doing the Clasped Weft as a pattern. Having bigger yarn, the weft helped. I really wanted it to be more weft space. I wanted to show the weft way more. So this is why I decided to choose a bigger size of weft for this. So this whole project is all 100% acrylic. Now for the heddle size, I use my 7.5 Heddle. And I also warp the full size of the loom. Talking about this, to do the measurement for this project, so how to measure the warp, I based myself on a blanket that I already had, and I already liked the size of it. So just to make sure to have something that will be very similar to this for the finished product. So the width of the blanket that I based myself on was actually a bit narrower than twice this, but it's okay. I prefer my blanket a little bit wider if I can. And then for the length of the project, so on the blanket, the length was 1.5 meter, so which is a good length. So I will be weaving for 1.7 meter. This will take into account for the shrinkage that might happen once the project is off the loom and wet finished. So at the end, I will probably have around 1.5 meters, or maybe a little more. So now the tricky part is to calculate the work for both those panels, and it's not that tricky. It's just that we really need to for me, it's easier if I really visualize what I need for the final project. So I decided to work the two panels of the blanket together, so on the same warp. To do so, I think it will help me save some time, that's for sure. But the warp was very, very long, so I could have direct warped my loom, but I didn't feel like walking through the living room for that many meters, and also I'm not sure my living room would have been very livable for a while while I was doing this, because it really, I worked for 4.5 meters, so it really took a lot of space, but it's feasible. But for this project, for me, it made more sense to do the indirect warp method. So here's the calculation. So my two panels will need to be 1.7 meters. So let's see, 1.7 meter here and 1.7 meter there. I will also want to keep fringes on this project, so I will have fringes on all ends of the panels. So just keep in mind that I don't only need fringes at the beginning and the end, but in between, when I do the transition between the two panels, I also need to keep in mind that here there will be fringes. So I need to have some length here that is considered for the fringes. So 1.7 plus 1.7 makes 3.4 meters, and then I kept 20 centimeters at the beginning for the first fringes, which is also the length that I usually allow for attaching the warp to the loom. So that's 20, so now we are at 3.6, and then another 20 for the fringes in the middle. So that will make 4 meters, and then I need to consider again another 20 to maybe 30 centimeters for the end. So I'm at 4.3 meters already, and I added a bit more yardage just to make sure that I will not be short in the end of the project, because I hate having waste. I really hate wasting yarn, but what I hate even more is not having enough to finish a project, because it's much easier to cut the fringes a little more than to add length to a project. So in the end, the whole warp was 4.5 meters. So now let's talk about the pattern of this blanket. So as I said, I will be doing Clasped Weft, but there's also a bit of a pattern in the warp. So I warped half of the loom in golden yellow and the other half in white. The first reason for this is because I didn't think I would have enough of any of the two colors to warp the whole width of the loom. So I knew I had to do a mix of color in order to be able to have enough yarn to warp the whole width. And the second reason why I did it this way is only because I thought it would look cool. So now for the Clasped Weft pattern. It's a technique that I think is very fun, because you can make shapes as you go along, and I think it's very cool. For this one, I decided to do very random shapes, but my random shapes, they go from larger to thinner and then larger again all the way through the panel. Also, the way I decided to alternate the colors of my Clasped Weft is that one row will be mostly gray, and then the other row will be mostly orange, and so on. So the colors, they just really blend together, and I think it's a very cool effect because I have two different colors in the weft and also two different colors in the warp. But the colors in the warp, they're just there to tone down a little bit the colors of the weft. And this one, the orange really makes the weft blended, and the white just make the gray and the orange looks a little lighter. Here is my setup for weaving the Clasped Weft. So on the left side, I have my shuttle with the orange yarn, and on my right side, I have my gray yarn. So the gray yarn is not on a shuttle because it wouldn't work if it were. The gray yarn is still on the ball, and I take it as I go. So let's just see. So here you see a little bit of the tripod too. So here is the gray ball, and as I go, I just unwind it from the ball as I need more yarn for weaving. And I put the ball into a ball. I put the ball into a ball to make sure that the ball just doesn't roll around the room and get dirty. So now to weave the Clasped Weft, I'm now in the up position, and I take my shuttle, and I make it go all the way through the shed, all the way through the loom. I make sure that my edge is nice, that it doesn't pull too tightly or that I don't have any loose yarn on the edge. And then I will just zoom a little bit down. Here I have my gray yarn that is still hanging from the last pick I did. So I will simply go underneath it. And now the orange yarn, it's like if it just, they're just twisted together, if you like, or intertwined. So it's like if my orange yarn just grabbed my gray yarn. And I will go back into the shed, but I don't change the shed. So I was in the up position and I will stay in the up position. So this has for effect to double the yarn in the shed. And I just pull it. And now this is the fun part, because by pulling, I'll try to show you a bit more. I can make the pattern that I want by just pulling one way or another, like that. So as I said, my pattern, I make one row that is mostly gray and then one row that is mostly orange. So now last one was mostly gray, so this one I need it to be mostly orange. By this I mean that the orange weft will be trespassing, if you like, into the right side of my warp. So let's see, let's put it just a little bit further than the other one, and then I fix my edges and I beat. Let's do it one more time. So I take my shuttle, I make it go all the way through the shed, I make sure that my edge will be fine, and then I take my black yarn, I go underneath with my shuttle so that the yarn is grabbed, and then I go back into the shed. So I was in the down shed, so I am still in the down shed. And now I play around and I try to fix it. So this, for this row now, the last one was mostly orange, so this one will be mostly gray. So I'm just going to put it, well, let's go this like this. One thing that is important when doing clasped weft is to always be mindful of your edges. As we pull the yarn here and there, sometimes it will also pull on your edges. So before you beat, just make sure that you give it an extra tuck, that you make sure that the yarn isn't pulling too much of your work together. So otherwise you will have maybe something that will go narrower. So really just be mindful of your edges. It's worth it to take the time to just place it again. So, oops, now as I was talking, I changed the position of my yarn, so it's going to be here. And now I beat. Just like that. And I go like this all the way through the panel. So, another particularity of weaving this blanket is that I will be, as I said, weaving two panels. And they will be sewn. I will sew them together afterwards. So I need to make sure that they are the same length. This is very, very important to keep a good track of how much I have woven as I go. And there's a way to go around it. If you have one panel that is longer than the other one, I will show you at the end what you can do if this happens to you. But for this project, it's very important to always keep track of how much you have woven and keep good track of it. Sometimes, to be honest, when I weave, I go, just approximately, but for this one it's important to be more precise on your weaving, calculating your weaving progress. To do this, one way I go is I use masking tape and I write on it as I go along how many inches I have woven, inches or centimeters. And then I just do the addition to know how much further I am. So now the first panel is all woven. So I have woven for 1 meter and 70 centimeter. So now I will do the second panel. So there are two ways to go for doing this. The first way would simply be to advance my warp. As I said before, I wanted to keep at least 40 centimeters of unwoven warp that will be eventually my fringes. So I could just advance my warp of 40 centimeters and then start weaving again. but this is not what I'm going to do today, and the reason is that I'm using a weft that is very thick. So right now on my front beam, I don't know if it shows, but it's pretty packed already. It's starting to be pretty full. I don't know how full it can get, and today I'm not going to find it out either. For me, what's the best thing to go will be to again advance my work, but just enough to leave 20 centimeters of fringes on my first panel. Then I will cut my work, and for what is left I will attach it onto my front beam and start weaving again. So this way I will not risk having my front beam too jam-packed with too much fabric, too much thick fabric. I think it might work, but I don't want to risk it. So I will go with the safer option. It will take a bit more time because I need to reattach my warp, but I think it will be worth it in the end. So I take up the braid up the back and I gently roll the project onto the front beam. Hope you see well. This will be enough. I will put the braid on. Again, if I wanted to use the first method, I would keep on rolling onto the front beam until I reach my 40 centimeters of warp, but today I will stop at 20 and cut. So here, let's see. So 20 centimeters, it's around here. So I will simply cut it. One trick to cut it is to keep the warp pretty loose, because if it's under tension, it might just spring if you want, and it's gonna maybe mess up with my threading. By being very careful, my threading will stay the same, so I will not have to rethread any of my heddle, just really attach it to the front. So I talked, so now I'm not sure of my measurement. So there we go, around here, and I go very approximately. I'm not And now, just to secure the thread, I will advance my work a little bit more again. Let's enjoy the unrolling of the first panel. Now that it's off the loom, I will very carefully just fold it together. I will not fix the end yet. So the loose ends here, I will not fix them yet, and I will tell you later why. Now, as you can see, I have my two panels all woven up, and I have lined them together and very precisely to make sure that both the panels are the same length. And as you can see, one of my panels is a bit longer than the other one, so there's a solution for that. It's an easy fix. The reason why this happened, it's all my fault. In my recalculation in the beginning, I forgot to take into account the space needed for the scrap yarn. So this was close to 15 centimeters there that I lost. And also, again, in the beginning, my warp thread got very tangled, so I had to cut some length, so this kind of bite me later on in the project. I thought maybe I would be okay, but no, one of my panel is a bit longer, so my final blanket will be a bit shorter than what I expected. But as I said, easy fix. So before I told you that once I took the first panel of the loom, I didn't fix the end. I didn't do the knots already, and this is the reason why, because somehow I knew this could happen. So I lined both of my panels together, and I just unweave the rows of the panel that is longer than the other one until they are the same length, and when they will be the exact same length, then I will just do the knots, and after that we'll be good to sew the two panels together. So now my two panels have knots on their end, so there's nothing will unweave. So now I can sew the two panels together. So I really wasn't sure how I wanted to do this. I don't know if I wanted to put the gray together in the middle or the orange together in the middle. So I asked you guys on Instagram what you thought would look better, and by 80% you thought that the gray in the middle will look better, so this is what I'm going to do. So thank you very much. This really helped me, really. And so and if you are not one of my Instagram followers, make sure to follow me. So now for the sewing, I'm just gonna sew this two panels right here, and just so you know, I am no seamstress, so this might not be the nicest seam you will ever see, but I'll try my best. So I will take one of my knitting needle to do this, and I will take some of my warp thread, because I think this is gonna blend the easiest into my woven piece. Because if I had taken the weft, because the yarn was very bulky, was very big, I think it would have been too bulky on the seam. I think it would have been showing too much. So with this, I really hope it's only gonna blend in with the warp as it is. So I will, and I will take off a big piece. So here's the stitch that I did for sewing my two panels together. I don't know if there's a name to this stitch. I just really followed my gut instinct. If you know the name of the stitch, or if you have a better stitch that you know that could work better, please let me know in the comments down below. So simply what I did, I put the two panels very equally next to each other, and I passed my needle underneath the warp threads that were the closest to the edge. So the very last warp thread that I could see, and I made sure that they were always equal, so it was always the same warp thread of the same pick, if you'd like, on both panels. Once I have put my needles under the two warp threads, I pulled, but not too strongly, just lightly, so that it's not too squished together. So this is it. This is the final blanket. I'm so happy with how it turned out. Thank you very much. I feel like there's a little bit of all of you in this project. And I really hope you like this video. And see you next time. Bye-bye.